Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. If you have heard me recently on my 5-minute crochet podcast in the mornings, you know that I'm all about trying new things, and I think that every person can succeed at crochet, but I also know that I have failed at some very easy elementary beginner things in life, and so maybe you might need some help with woobles. So have you failed at woobles and need some help? Let's talk about some ways that the foolproof woobles could go woobling wrong for you and how to avoid those missteps and mistakes. So first of all, when you unpackage your wooble, you're going to have a little piece like this that comes out of your main ball of yarn. And your little wooble will have 3 stitch markers. The orange one denotes the first stitch of the round, and then the 2 green ones are the next stitch and the next stitch. So most of the time, every single time I've opened a wooble, there are 6 stitches that start the round. So orange is number 1, then green is number 2, then the next green is number 3, then this is number 4, number 5, and number 6, okay? So the problem is that this little knot that holds, like we're not putting our hook right in that knot and going from there, which it would be nice if we could do that, but I think for security in terms of like not having it unravel in the shipping process, they tie this little knot here. Well, we have to undo that knot. Well, this knot is pretty tight. So on my previous attempts at woobles, when I tug at this long strand that's attached to the ball to undo that little slip knot, it rips out more than the knot, but then also the next couple of stitches. And if you're an extreme beginner, you may need those. So here's a couple of things, a couple ways to problem solve this. So the very first thing you're going to do is try to, if you have another stitch marker, I'm going to take the green one out. The very first thing you can do is when you're looking at this slip knot, this little tight knot right there, the next V underneath it, so these 2 little strands right here, I'm going to take my stitch marker and slip it in between there, and I'm going to hold on to that loop so that I don't undo that loop also. So I'm going to move a stitch marker to there. So what's going to happen is I'm going to tug on this, tug on this, tug on this, but man, you have to put a lot of force into it. So I don't know that that's such a great idea. So let's loosen this knot the best we can by pulling that little piece up, and this one was easier than the last one I just did, and untying that knot. And it should look like this now, where you untied that knot, and now this little loop is standing proud and strong there, and that is where your hook will go to then start the woobles pattern, okay? But if you mess that up, don't worry, I'll show you. So on most woobles patterns, I just want to show you this little bit here. This is not the same pattern. This is not the ta-ta pattern. So, but most of them start here, and it'll say start 6 single crochet in a magic loop. That's what this already is. So if you do go from here, you're actually starting on round 2. Now, if you mess up, and I'll show you how we mess up and pull all the way out and have to start over, then you're going to have to start with round 1. Okay, but if you manage to keep it intact, this is round 1, and you are going to start working on round 2. Okay, so what happens if you did pull that, that strand that's tight to the ball, and you pulled it too hard, and like you pulled a bunch of stuff out? Let's say you pulled a bunch of stuff out. You're like, oh no, I pulled way too much, and now I've got nothing, and my stitch markers fell out. Well, what's going to happen now is you're going to make an adjustable loop. Now, I do have a separate video for this, but for the purposes of the Wooble Fail, we're going to go ahead and take the cut end of the yarn that is attached to the ball. The ball is here. We're going to wrap it around our fingers. Actually, I want to do it, let's see, this way. I want to do it this way. I'm going to take the cut end across my fingers so that the cut end is on top up here. I'm going to kind of wrap it all the way around the bottom twice. so that I'm now I'm holding on to that cut end and holding on to the yarn end that's attached to the ball at the same time. You see what I'm saying? So this is going to go all the way around, and I will hold it with a little bit of tension right there. Okay, so this one that's coming off, the second one back here, is the one that comes down and is attached to the ball. Okay, you with me so far? Take a little screenshot if you need to. So I'm going to take my hook and I'm going to slide it in the groove here between my fingers. I'm going to grab the second deeper piece of yarn and pull it underneath the first one. Okay, and so now I can pinch with my hook hand and hold all of this stuff and let my left hand go, let my tension hand go. And then we can make this loop as big or as little as we need to start stitching. So this is what we look like right now. I'm just moving my hands around, but I'm not moving the circle at all. I'm going to chain one, which is grab the yarn and pull through the loop that's on the hook, and that helps me anchor this little circle. Now I can pull on the cut end of the yarn and make this circle smaller, as small as I want to, but I want to be able to fit in 6 single crochets in that loop. So I've taken the cut loop and moved it in line with the circle, so it now looks like the circle is 2 strands. Okay, I'm going to work over all of that. So then we'll start with round 1 because we obliterated round 1. So I'm going to insert my hook into that circle, that hole like a donut, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops on the hook. That is my first stitch. I'm going to drop my hook for just a moment, find my orange stitch marker, open up my orange stitch marker, and I am going to put my stitch marker back in that first stitch. So underneath both loops of that stitch. We could also do just 1 loop if you want, and that way if you do unravel, it'll catch it like a OSHA harness to keep you from falling off the cliff. So go ahead and put that stitch marker. That is now stitch number 1 of the round, and we're going to finish this round by getting up to 6 stitches. Easy for me to say, 6 single crochets in the donut, and the orange one counted as the first one. So we will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I just made number 6. Now we can tighten the donut hole, the bagel hole, up by pulling on the cut end, holding securely to the little piece of work, and pulling the cut end so that the hole closes up and our little donut gets closed up, our little bagel grows, and I'm into bread these days, can you tell? And so now we are back to have finished round 1, and we can go ahead and work the instructions starting with round 2. Okay, so that's the first way that people fail at Woobles. Other ways that people fail at Woobles is that you run out of yarn. So if we are kind of moving along round 2, the next stitch, you're going to make the first stitch of round 2. You're going to put it where the stitch marker is, but you'll pick up both of those loops. So when let me go back and do that slower. Okay, so here's where we are. We're starting round 1 is done. To start round 2, we're going to insert our hook under both bars of that first stitch where the stitch marker is, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. Now that we have just placed a stitch where the stitch marker is, we're going to move the stitch marker, pull it out of that stitch, and put it right there underneath. Let's give you this view. Right there is where we're putting it, because that's the new first stitch of the next round. So we will move that stitch marker up each time we get around to it and we use it again. Now, if you don't crochet over your cut tail, which I love to do, but for the purposes of today, I'm not going to, because another Wooble fail possibility is that you forget or drop or forget to put the stitch marker and you forget to move it up, and then suddenly you don't know where the start of the round is and you don't know how many rounds you have. Okay, so let's get all the way back here. I'm sort of finishing round 2. I don't have any idea if, I don't think this is necessarily the pattern for the ta-ta, but, or tay-tay, I should say. So let's see here. Okay, so as we get around to this, say for instance, we forgot to move the stitch marker, or I'm now going to drop it and I'm going to just keep crocheting my merry way. And I think I'm on round 3, so I'm following the instructions, whatever they might be. And I get to a point and I'm like, oh no, I don't know where the start of my round is. Where should my stitch marker have been? How am I going to know? Well, the best way to know is to see where this cut end comes off. So where this cut end is popping out of the fabric, that's where our slip knot was. Okay, so if we are counting rounds, I would look for your stitch marker for your cut tail, and on the back you can say, okay, look, it's coming out of the top side or the north side. It's of the circle there. So if you draw a straight line up, then your first stitch is going to be up here. Now you could do, like, see, if you do it this way, then it's not straight up. It's kind of going to the side of the circle. So pull it straight up, and that's probably where your first stitch is, approximately. Now you may be off by a stitch, but it isn't necessarily like a terrible end of the world if you don't have it exactly right. So put the stitch marker back there. Or you could unravel. If you want to unravel before you've put a face or anything on, you just hold the piece in your hand, and then the yarn that's attached to the ball, you're just going to pull, and unravel and go back to start. Okay? Now, how do you know if you should pull over or start over? Well, it's up to you, but if you are getting the hang of it after like the 3rd or 4th round and you think, oh, I'd really like to start over, you can pull out like that and go back all the way back to the beginning if you want. No big deal. So we would go all the way back here, and I think that looks like about the start. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The cut tail is right there at the beginning of that round, so that is the start over. Or you can rip all the way back to nothing and then start over with the magic loop wrapped around your fingers like I showed you. Okay, other Wooble fails. What if you skip a stitch and there's a hole in it? Well, if there's a hole in your Wooble because you missed a stitch, like I would say put the face over it. So I wouldn't go back and redo it. But if you're going to be appliquing or sewing on another piece, like this white is sewn onto Chim Chim, then that's where I would put the face. I would make sure the face is over the top of the hole. So or like this is little, but if there was a hole like around there, you might be able to strategically place a thing. Or if you had a hole like on the side, you could strategically decide where the ears are going to go first so that you can cover that up. Okay. Also, if you run out of yarn, well, if you have a hole, you can put the hole on the back. That's another option. If you have finished off your thing and done the face and put on the ears and all that stuff, I would not suggest unraveling it. It's just like, it's going to rip the yarn a little bit, and you got to take off the face, you got to take off the ears. That's a lot of work. So I don't know that I would do that. Another way that you can fail at a Wooble is to run out of yarn. If you run out of yarn, then you probably have made your stitches way too big. Either you didn't use the hook that came with it and you used a hook that was way too big, or you were super generous with your looping and you made stitches and you pulled up a loop and then you pulled through really loose and then you made another one really big. So if you make the stitches way too big like that, where you're really seeing a lot of air and there's a lot of give in between your hook and the work, then you might run out of yarn. If you run out of yarn, you're probably going to have to pull back out. The good news is that you will find that out before you get to the face and stuff. Another Wooble fail Is there another Wooble fail? Bad gauge, your gauge is messed up. Yeah, you run out of yarn, there's a hole, you have to unravel, you have to start over, you lost your stitch marker, all of that. So those are lots of ways that you can fail at a Wooble. But if you saw this little video, maybe you can avoid some of these fails and fix it before you fasten off and sew everything in. The only other way to fail at a Wooble that I'm aware of, and if you think of some more and you need some more help, put the comment below and I'll see if I can help you. The other way to fail at a Wooble is this, like this little chim that I did, is if your gauge is uneven, which means it's tighter in some places, it's looser in some places, and it just has an overall like lumpy look to it. And I would have solved this by being kinder on my hand. Like I feel like I was crocheting way too tight out of, I don't know, stress. So it looks nice and even up here, but then, and we started up here and went down, but by the time I got to down here, it just looks a little lumpier. So I think I probably would have pulled back to like here on the yellow and then been kinder and gentler with myself and with the hook and evened out my stitches a little bit. If you have any questions, let me know. You can also come visit me on the 5 Minute Crochet Podcast most weekday mornings. And if you have more questions, or tell me other ways that you have failed at Woobles, and I can see if I can help you with it. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time.